Okay, let's look at the second example. And so we've got Stella and we have Jose. And they're telling us that it takes Stella 4 hours to paint a room. And it takes Jose 3 hours to paint the very same room. Okay. The question is, how long would it take for them to work together? In other words, with their combined rates. Well, first of all, it all comes back to this, right? Rate times time is equal to amount. So we need to ask ourselves, what's the rate? What are the units? What's the time? Or what are the units in terms of time? And then what's the amount, right? Well, they're mentioning, or they're using hours, so then time would be in terms of hours. And we're talking about painting a room within a certain amount of time. So the amount would, of course, be in terms of rooms or in terms of one room, right? So we've got Stella. And so since they said that it takes her 4 hours to paint a room, we can write down her rate, right? It's one room, right? That's the amount per 4 hours, okay? And this makes sense because if they're saying that it takes her 4 hours, that would mean we would take this rate, one room per 4 hours, multiplied by 4 hours, and you would see that the 4's cancel out, right? You would see that the h's cancel out, and you would get one room, right? And similarly with Jose, since they said that it takes him 3 hours to complete a room, we could write that as one room per 3 hours, right? And we can verify that this is true because we can multiply by 3 hours, right? And so hours cancel out, 3's cancel out, you get one room, okay? So the question though is how long would it take them to complete one room if they decided to work together, right? So that means we're going to allow t to become a variable, right? So together, right? Together, it would just be the sum of their rates, right? So 1/4, right? That's her rate, Stella's rate, plus Jose's rate, times some amount of time because they're combining their rates and they're working together. This must be equal to 1, and that 1 represents the one room, right? So working together, right? Her rate is 1/4, one room per 4 hours. But if we replace this 4 hours with a t, you get t hours times this. Hours cancel out, but the 4 wouldn't cancel out with anything. You would get t/4. And similarly with this, you'd get t/3, right? And you can see why that is, because if I do this plus this times t, we can distribute, right? You would get t/4 plus t/3 is equal to 1, okay? So the question is, what is t, right? So you could simplify just on the left-hand side, or you know what we could do? We could look at these denominators, right? Because we have two rational expressions, and we could find the lowest common denominator, and we can see that must be 12, right? Because 4 goes into 12, 3 also goes into 12 as well. So why don't we multiply everything by 12, okay? I'm going to multiply this by 12. I'm going to multiply this by 12. And I'm also going to multiply this by 12, right? As long as I do everything to the left-hand side and the right-hand side, then it's all good, okay? Well, what are we going to get? Well, this is going to become 3t plus 4t is equal to 12. Well, 3t plus 4t is just going to be 7t equal to 12. And so since we want to find the amount of time that it would take them to complete this one room working together, we just have to divide both sides by 7, okay? T is going to be equal to 12 divided by 7, right? This is in terms of hours, right? And they didn't ask us to round to the nearest 10th or 100th or 1,000th or anything, so really we should leave this as our final answer. But if they wanted us to round it, we could say, well, it's approximately equal to 1.7 hours. hours, right? But this would be ideal. Since they didn't ask us to round, we can just leave this as an exact value, right? So it would take 12/7 of an hour to complete one room if they are working together,